Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Unstoppable Woman podcast. In this episode, we are talking about the subtle ways that you limit yourself, that you say you can't break through. You can't have that income breakthrough. You can't have that time breakthrough, that ease and flow breakthrough, that relationship breakthrough, that physical health breakthrough. We're going to be dissecting one of the biggest ways and subtle ways that you meaning everyone, limits themselves until they recognize this pattern in themselves. So welcome to the episode. If you are a loyal listener, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sharing this with your friends and colleagues who are women in business, who are really going for it. This is the material that helped me as the founder of this business, The Unstoppable Woman, and also as a businesswoman myself, break through and really make a quantum leap in my income. So if you don't know my story, it's one of going from, working long hours, 12, 14, 16 hours, feeling like I could never get ahead, feeling like I wasn't enough, feeling quite limited, not having a lot of joy in my life, even though I was a pretty positive person. And making a good income, but not an outstanding income. And when I learned how to think differently, in today's episode, we're going to talk about one way of thinking differently, a pattern that you need to be aware of in your thought process so you can choose to think differently and act differently so that you can break through. And when I was able to teach myself how to think differently, I was able to skyrocket with my income. What did that look like? That looked like going from, just over 100K a year to 700K in 1 year, which I'm not the only person who has done, but it's something that most people don't do. They limit themselves. And it wasn't for lack of trying previous to this year. I was throwing everything at it, right? I was working hard. I had great work ethic. I thought I was pretty smart. I was well educated. I thought I was being a pretty good person in this world and doing the right things. And yet I was working really hard, but not getting that big leap. And I want to help you. The whole purpose of this podcast and the teaching that we do, whether you come to our Income Breakthrough Summit or join one of our programs, the fundamental teaching that I have a strong stance for is that you are not wrong. You are not defective. That if they can do it, meaning me or someone else that you're looking out there at who has great success, if they can do it, you can do it as well. You just have to learn new skills and apply new skills. And one of the skills that you have to learn is how to think differently. The universe is an incredibly ordered place. There is a cause and effect to everything on this physical plane that we experience. So if you want to have your income breakthrough, there is a different cause. And yet most people stay in a bubble of what is a normalized way of being, and it only gets them the same results that they've always gotten. So let's say that you're challenged by being overwhelmed. You're a mom, you're a wife, you're a business owner, you're a leader, you're leading your team, you are wanting to do the business development work that you know is so essential, and you want to be doing your marketing work, and you want to be doing your client execution work. And there's so much in your business just on its own. There's hiring, there's actual business visioning and planning, but you're spread too thin. You're like, wow, I am so overwhelmed. How can I do this thinking? How can I invest in learning a new way of thinking to get me to the next level if I can't even handle what I've got right now? Now, I'm going to give you credit because you're someone who's listening to this podcast. So you're already investing a certain amount of time. There's a next level beyond this. Let me just tell you that this is like level one. It's great. It's helpful. It raises your level of awareness. I share this content because I want everyone listening to this podcast to up level and really start being able to have a new belief system and a new thinking process so that they can work at a higher level. Okay. And there's steps beyond this as well. So this is level one. I want to give you like thumbs up, cred for this. And it's where I started as well. I started by listening to people, going to seminars, going to events, really immersing myself in a new way of thinking. I had to do that in order to break free because I was in this bubble of what I'm going to call normalized thinking. It was how everyone around me was thinking, but I wasn't surrounded by the uber successful. I was surrounded by really good people. Okay, this is not a value judgment. I want everyone to hear that really clearly. This is not a value judgment. I just wasn't surrounded by successful people in terms of their business and their income. I was surrounded by a great group of middle-class people, including my parents, my family, my friends, my husband, who had a middle-class way of thinking about money and earning money and how to make decisions about your time and how to make decisions about your money. So I was working in my business from the place of my normalized thinking, what everyone around me was doing. And I wasn't thinking from a place of where someone who was already uber successful financially and in their business, which was the goal I was going after. There are lots of different goals, right? There are goals for your health. There are goals for your relationships. There are goals in many parts, mental well-being, all of this. And I actually had a lot of other goals as well. But the one that I chose as the primary one to go after initially was the financial. And that was super important for me to just claim and own. And this is not going to be a full in-depth discussion of money stories, but I had a lot of money stories, and most people in our society have a lot of money stories that are limiting them and capping their ability to think differently. So I did have to change how I was thinking about money. That was like one of the basic strong things that I had to do, something that I teach at our Income Breakthrough Summit and continually throughout. And I hope you get a lot of that from this podcast as well. That you have to change how you're thinking about money, income, success. And when I started on that journey, I realized that this new way of thinking that I was learning, this ordered way of thinking, this way of thinking that actually got me the effects that I wanted rather than what I kept getting, which was, overwhelm, unhappiness, lack of joy, not enough money, good life, not a bad life. Okay. I had a positive attitude. I had a can-do attitude. I was excited about life. And yet I had a set point that really wasn't about experiencing the fullness of life, living a lit up life, living a delighted life. And that is something that in my pursuit of the financial goal, I learned how to live, because this ordered way of thinking and being and acting creates order in all aspects of your life if you apply it. So application is key here. I want you, if you're taking notes, if you're writing things down, I want you to really, really, really get that you cannot just listen. You have to apply, you have to act. And most people don't put themselves in a container where They are accountable to what they say they're going to do. They're accountable to their actions. They are in a container where there are other people who are playing at the same level as they are. So let's go back to my normalized life. I was in a life where like the people around me were only working this hard. We're only spending this amount of money. We're only this happy. We're only going after this level of dreams, this level of income. They were not people who had bigger dreams. They were not people who were, they might have talked about bigger dreams, wanting to do something, but they didn't necessarily take the actions on the things that were stretches for them. Not the things that they were normally like who they are. Like there are a lot of people who are adventuresome. They love traveling. That's like their nature already. So that's not a stretch for them. What would be a stretch for them is building a business that where they would have to own their genius and ask for the sale and make more money and raise their prices and lead team and be more visible in their marketing and actually do marketing and all the things that are required of business. That's actually a stretch for them. And they are in, I'm going to raise my hand and say this was me too. They're in a normalized bubble that says, you don't speak that way. You don't do those things. That's talking big. That's talking large. You can't do this. You can't say no in this way. You have to say yes to everyone in your life and spread yourself so thin. This is a classic one for women in business. Okay. And you've heard this before. This is not the first time you've heard this, but I want to go a little bit deeper here with you guys. You know the adage, like, no is a full sentence. Say no more than yes. Okay. You don't have to be a people pleaser. All these things, you understand them intellectually, but you're in a bubble where that is expected of you. You're in a bubble where that's all you see and know. You see other women who are struggling with making these kinds of decisions. What do I say no to? Do I say no to my husband? Do I say no to my kids? Do I say no to myself? What do I say no to? And they're struggling with this choice and they don't know how to get out of that paradigm, that way of thinking. So you're in a normalized way of thinking. Now, again, this is not a value judgment. It is not something that I'm going to say is wrong. It's just not going to get you the results that you want. And that's very different. Very, very different. So you want to imagine this like you're in this bubble and the bubble is clear. The ecosystem of the bubble. Everyone limits themselves in similar ways. Everyone is afraid and in fear in similar ways. Everyone is saying these are the values in similar ways. And then you look outside through the bubble, through the clear but defined boundary, and you see people over there. They are doing what you want. They are making the kind of money, they're having the kind of ease, they're experiencing life the way you want. And you think, I know it's possible, I want that. Okay, so maybe let's go large first. Maybe it's Beyonce, maybe it's Oprah, maybe it's Sarah Blakely, maybe it's Richard Branson. Okay, maybe it is, Elon Musk. You see these people and you're like, wow, this is amazing what they're doing. I want some of that. But it's very easy to say, oh, that's too far ahead. I don't know where to start, even though if you look at their stories, there's an incremental stepping stone. There's work that evolved. Most people just go straight to the end and go, it's too big of a leap. Okay. So then let's go to someone like me, who is nowhere near at the level of Richard Branson or Oprah Winfrey, okay, or Beyonce or whatever, right? Like they have much bigger businesses than I do. Yet I've done something that you probably haven't yet done. And you're looking through the bubble at this and you're saying, well, you were more confident. You had this kind of life. You had this kind of business. You had this kind of schooling. Your life was different. and you start making excuses for why that's different on the outside of the bubble, instead of looking and going, okay, what would I need to do differently? If they can do it, I can do it. But I need the key that opens the door that's right there in the transparent bubble. Okay. What is that? What am I missing? And yet what you do is you go back into the bubble for the resources instead of going outside the bubble for the resources. And what does that look like? And here I want you to listen up and recognize if you're cutting yourself off from recognizing this in yourself. Like if you're saying, I know that, or this triggers you and you start blaming me, or you start rejecting the idea, any way of shutting off right now is really important for you to pay attention to. So you see something you want, you think, okay, I want that. I want the key. She's giving me the key, actually, but I'm going to go back to the bubble and make decisions from inside this normalized way of being. And the way I know that I'm doing that is I start making excuses instead of making a different choice. Because here's the thing, guys, success leaves clues. The secret is in plain sight. It is something I mentioned over and over and over again. It is something that I teach in this podcast, at our summits, to my clients, to our mastermind. It's not anything that is being held back from you. The key to success is in plain sight. You've heard it if you've listened to this podcast, if you come to our summits, anywhere, if you've heard it 1,000 times, and yet you don't want to hear it, you come up with excuses instead, okay? So you have to look at who you're listening to. Whose advice are you taking? Are you taking advice from your business besties who's at the same level as you, your accountability partner who's at the same level as you? Are you taking advice from your husband or your friends or your parents? All valuable people in your life, but have they done what you want to do? That's the question that you have to ask. And you think that all experience is the same. You think everyone is having the same experience as you because it's normalized. It's in the bubble. So what kind of experience am I talking about? Uncertainty, confusion on what to do next in your business, overwhelm, wanting to do so many things and not having enough time, not knowing how to get from point A to point B in your business, how to make more money. Maybe it's how to step out of the fear of not having enough money. Making an income breakthrough. There are things that you are confused, uncertain, not clear about, you don't know the methodology to, and you think everyone has that same experience. Everyone is overwhelmed. Everyone gets confused. Everyone gets depressed if they break up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Like there are cultural norms that are inside the bubble. So a really good experience for me on this was years and years and years ago. I was at a meditation event and, maybe 20 people. There weren't that many people there. And I asked everyone if their backs were hurting while sitting in meditation, because my back was hurting while sitting in meditation. And everyone was like, no, not me. And I thought everyone was having the same experience as me. Everyone was sitting and it was causing them back pain. But it's not that no one else might have that experience, because I know that that does happen for people. But in that experience, 20 other people were not having that experience. But I thought everyone was having the same experience as I was. So that's being in this bubble. And you don't have to stay in the bubble. You don't have to stay in the normalized, acceptable to everyone around you's thinking, because that's going to keep you in the bubble. That's not going to allow you to make that breakthrough. Another way of looking at this is the concept of working to the norm. If everyone in the class works to a certain level, A on the test requires this, a B on the test requires this, the C on the test requires this. Everyone knows what that level is. You work to that level. And then you don't kind of stretch yourself. You don't go beyond that. But if you put yourself, let's say you skip a grade, you go up 3 grades. And then you're in a different pond, you're in a different classroom, and everyone is working at a much higher level. You will either quit or you will come up to that level, okay? But in this normalized world that you're in, that level is defined outside of you, and you're unconsciously agreeing to it. So you need to put yourself in a different container. This is one of the key success principles. You have to put yourself in a different container that charges you to think differently, because you can no longer just sit back and say, well, everyone around me is doing this. If you are in a family or an environment where everyone eats too much, you'll work to that, you'll behave at that norm generally. It's really challenging to move beyond that and start eating differently, okay? If you are part of a family that doesn't exercise, it will be harder for you to change your way of being and exercise, because everyone around you is drinking beers and having barbecues instead of going for a 3-day camping trip and hiking. Simplistic examples, and you can probably find lots of references to people who are the exception to that rule, but you get the idea. Generally speaking, you work, you behave, you act, you think in the same way and at the same level as the people that you surround yourself with. So how do you do it differently? How do you get out of this normalized thinking? Well, the first thing is you have to claim your desires. Most people right there, they'll claim their desires and they'll reject it, okay? Then let's say I help them. This is one of the things, again, we do at the summits. It's like, I really help people claim their desires, because I hold a different energy of what's possible. It's like a permission slip that happens energetically in the room, if you will. And people suddenly get this download and recognize, this is what I really want. And they claim their desires, okay? And then they have to decide to go do it. And what most people do is right there, they start saying, no, I can't. These are all the reasons why. That would be selfish of me. That would be unreasonable of me. I couldn't possibly do it. You're different. That only works for you. This way of thinking and being, that only works for you. That couldn't possibly work for me. I'm the exception. Now, you don't necessarily say that in so many words. And again, this is where you have to have a level of awareness about yourself. You say it in some way, some excuse, some alibi for why you can't make a decision and go forward, why you can't take the action, okay? So you know that if you want something different, you have to make a different decision. You have to do something different. This is logic. This is not anything that your logical mind would dismiss. You know, if you want a different result, you have to do something different. You have to think different. You have to respond differently. You have to make different decisions, all of this. And yet, there are lots of ways that you are most likely unconsciously making the same decision over and over again, staying in the bubble. So let me play out a few of these. One, you are setting reasonable income goals for yourself. Reasonable being like, they seem doable. Like if I'm making 50, I can get to 70. If I'm making 100, I can get to 138. Or recently what came up in our mastermind was someone whose real goal was 1.4 million, but her small goal, her reasonable goal, the goal that someone else outside of our world was trying to convince her to set, was 300K less. It was 1.1. Now she was already in the high 6 figures. So these were, 1.1 was really reasonable. Even 1.4 was reasonable. And she was in this back and forth around whether she could actually claim what she really wanted. And so this is one way that you know that you're not thinking in an ordered way, but thinking in an old in the bubble way. Okay, so you've been setting reasonable goals. If you've been a committed DIYer, okay, that was me for sure for years. I was like, I can read the book, I can listen to the podcast, I can do this on my own. I'm great at taking that information and translating it. I can do this, right? And I was committed to that because that was my upbringing. That was my normalized world. That was my identity, was someone who was a learner, which is great to be a learner. You have to be a learner. Okay. You can't not learn, right? This is part of growth as a human being. But a subset of that identity was I had to do it myself. If I didn't do it myself, I wasn't successful. I couldn't receive the credit for it if someone else helped me. What a crock of you know what. Okay. So in the beginning, I had to, buy the first course. It was like $197. That was such a big decision. Can I do that? Can I not do that? Then I had to go to an event in person, and it was a 3-day event. There were all these women there. I was like, where am I? What am I doing? And I remember how uncomfortable I was in that experience. And then I had to keep going to the next level. I joined more coaching programs, different mentorship, all along building my level of understanding until I broke through. And each time I've broken through, I've recognized that I had to do the work myself. I may have had the mentor who guided me, who set a container, who was able to help me see things differently. But I had to walk that path myself. It's always you. You can do it with people who hold you back, or you can do it with people that help you move forward, but it's always you that has to do the work. So I want to give you a little example of how you could, in that scenario, make a different decision that has a different outcome. So instead of repeating that again and again and again, what if you just made a different decision and said, I have enough time for this? Then you ask yourself a better question. How would I act if I did, in fact, have enough time to do what I want, to create what I want, to create the business that I wanted, to do all the things in my business that I wanted? Most people don't ask themselves that question because that would require that you make different decisions and change how you're being. And that might affect your relationships. And you think that your security comes from those relationships. And then you're worried about losing security and you freeze. And it can be very, very different. So most people are more attached to that normalized experience. They're unwilling. You have to be willing. This is super, super important to make a different decision. And most people understand or will listen to something like this, but they won't be willing to make another decision, a different decision. Okay. So they're attached to the overwhelm. They're attached to the struggle. You can say you're addicted to the struggle. You're addicted to the overwhelm, and you make it okay because everyone around you is having the same experience. But I'm telling you, there's the other side of the bubble where you're not having that experience. It's not that things aren't challenging in business. It's that you're responding differently and you have a completely different experience. It's about living a delighted life. So I want you to really ask yourself, are you asking questions? Are you listening, but not making new decisions? Are you saying, that's a great idea, but I can't do it because X, Y, and Z? That is a total smokescreen. Here's the thing. The answer is always here. God, spirit, source, the universe holds nothing back. I am not holding anything back. The answer always precedes the problem. But you have to get out of the bubble so that you can see it and act on it. And you do that by making a new decision each time from a place that you want to be, not from this normalized way of being. So that is super important. You have to make decisions from the place you want to be, not from the place you are, and listen Notice if you make excuses for yourself and do it differently. It will feel uncomfortable. The decision will feel uncomfortable because it's not your normalized way of being, and it will challenge you. So one of the best things that I ever did was I said, if they can do it, I can do it, right? I started to put myself on the other side of the bubble and started to think of myself as a successful person, and then hold myself accountable to start making decisions from a place of being successful rather than from the struggle place that I was already in. So with that, I'm Amira Alvarez. I am the founder and CEO of The Unstoppable Woman. Thank you so much for listening and joining us for this podcast. And I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us and being part of the Unstoppable Woman movement. We have got a ton of free resources for scaling your business at theunstoppablewoman.com/free stuff. And you can find that link in the description below. So go ahead and check those out. And we'd also love your help in getting our message out to more and more women. If you'd be willing to share this video with all the unstoppable women in your life, that would be fantastic. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Reviews, likes, and comments are greatly appreciated. We go in and read them all. So thank you for those, and thanks for listening, and be unstoppable.